Hello.
Hi, Tracy. It's another Books at Lunchtime. And this is very exciting. Chris Riddell is here with us today. The extremely well-known author and predominantly illustrator. And this is a little bit of a different one because he's actually drawing for us. Hi, Chris.
Hello, how are you?
Good, very good.
This is brilliant.
I'm delighted that I'm able to sort of be with you after last week's sort of debacle, which was, I think, entirely down to my broadband.
Well, we were just discussing, weren't we, the problems with rural Norfolk broadband, but you're back into connectivity down in Brighton now, so we're trying again, which is exciting. So oh well, how very exciting. So Chris, tell us a little bit while you're sketching away here, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to this year. What books have we likely got on our shelves that you can tell us about?
Oh my goodness. Well, let me just, I'm just perfecting now my Zoom portrait technique. Because I'm going to be doing my first ever sort of Zoom portrait for real next Monday in aid of Freedom from Torture, which is a charity I support. So a brave soul is going to submit themselves via Zoom to my pencil, and I'll be illustrating. We'll see how that goes. So that was a little warm up. But to answer your question, I mean, the answer is I've been up to far too much, and I've actually got a few books, and I'm just going to sort of change the camera now so that I can do a bit of sort of showing the the different things I have. Here I am in my studio well, my study in Brighton. The first one is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
Oh wow,
it's gorgeous. We've got one too.
Sort of hit the shelves, and again, if for purposes of display, what I might do is change back to the camera and just sort of turn some of the pages. Now this is a great big book that I finished illustrating just before we went into lockdown. So this was, I finished this in January, and here it is all printed and in our bookshops. And the sad thing was there was going to be a lovely exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum, which unfortunately has had to be postponed, but it is a comprehensive exhibition all about the different iterations of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And I was lucky enough to see the initial designs for it, and I've been included in one of the rooms. And it was a sort of going to be wonderful, but of course, like so many other things, it's been postponed for next year. And I just wanted to show you this. This is the very beginning of the book where I've attempted, this is hubris, I think, but I've attempted to sort of map Wonderland and Alice's journey through Wonderland and try and figure out geographically where she might be in this extraordinary world. And I've sort of alternated between sort of black and white drawings and color plates. So there are sort of these color plates and black and white drawings throughout. And I realized actually this is 320 pages, but every single page is illustrated. So you know, I left no Wonderland stone unturned in this. So it's a weighty thing, which I know to my cost, because a lot of them have been delivered to me, and I've had to sort of sign a lot of them and put them in boxes and take them out of boxes. And I'm aware that I'm talking to booksellers. You know what it's like unpacking and packing stock the entire time. I'm getting very used to that approach. Another book that I've done, which I think you've just sold the last copy of, is Pirate Stew, which is a collaboration with Neil Gaiman, my very good friend Neil, And he wrote this last year, and as luck would have it, you know, this is another book that I did during lockdown. So I began artworking this in February and March, those dark days. And so there's a certain sort of manic intensity, I think, to a lot of the illustrations in this book, because I had an awful lot of time on my hands during lockdown. No author promotional visits, nothing like that. So I was able to really sort of throw myself into it. And it does have a sort of cast of pirates who are babysitters, who come and babysit two children with inevitable piratical results. And they do make them some pirate stew for their supper. And whilst I was doing that, I was also illustrating this wonderful book, which is a debut novel by a writer called Francesca Gibbons. Fantastic, Tracy, I see you have your copy. I provided black and white illustrations to this, plus some end papers. Again, a map. One of my favorite things to do is to sort of map the various books that I illustrate. It always gives me a sense of place. So this is an extraordinary sort of mountain kingdom with a mysterious city and endless forests in which all sorts of stories can be told. And a mountain region up here, which is full of rather strange mountain-dwelling creatures. And I got to sort of, you know, do a little cast list at the beginning of the wonderful sort of characters that people the pages. And then inevitably, it's a very, very sort of thick book. So I wasn't able to illustrate it quite as comprehensively as I'd liked, but I did get to do some color, some black and white sort of plates, as it were, throughout the story. But it's a lovely, great big book, you know, sort of a lovely sort of read, I think. Any sort of, you know, 10 to 12-year-old looking for a bit of fiction, I think will enjoy this and can take their time over it. It comes in, I think, at about almost 500 pages. So there's a lot of story there. And then a little book of my own. This is Guardians of Magic, the Cloud Horse Chronicles. And this is the paperback which has come out. So just to add to the tally, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 books so far. And then there was my poetry book, Poems to Save the World With. And what a well-stocked bookshop Kett's bookshop is. I must visit very soon. And again, this was a book I did during lockdown, and it sort of, again, had a certain sort of intensity to it because of the situation we were in. And because this is a book I did sort of, you know, earlier on this year, I was able to put in a section of lockdown poems, which, including one that I wrote myself, which is, I wonder if I can find it. And it was, I wrote this poem when I was, I'm going to clear my desk, when I was actually, one night I came downstairs in May, I think it must have been, just before the book was due to go to print, and I was sitting in the garden because there was a full moon, a wonderful, one of those really super big moons. And everyone else had gone to bed. So I went outside and just sat outside. It was a lovely balmy evening. And there was this huge moon in the sky. And I just sat and looked at the moon and left the sort of door open. And then my son came down and discovered me sitting alone in the garden. And so I wrote a little poem about it, and it's called Lockdown. I sat beneath the May moon last night and missed my life in silver and shadow, with a distant trundling of trains going nowhere. There was a muted tranquility in sitting in the midnight garden, my lockdown house silent and sleeping behind me. Then you came down the stairs, and noticing the open door, stepped out to join me in the moonlight. "Oh, it's you, Dad," you said, smiling. And suddenly I was falling away into empty darkness, mourning the life you were missing so bravely. sort of sums up, I think, a lot of what I've been feeling about the sort of pandemic. For people like me in my studio, working from home as I do, lockdown seems perfectly normal. I don't think I've changed anything. You know, I hardly get out. I don't see many people. I'm probably the perfect self-isolating candidate. But I've really felt absolutely huge sympathy for all the younger generation who have had their lives curtailed and yet have gone about their everyday lives as bravely as they possibly can, and to large part uncomplaining. I visited a lot of schools before lockdown, and I haven't visited one since, except now I will sort of turn up sort of on Zoom and see kids. And I'm always amazed at just how sort of, you know, wonderful and cheerful and coping that they are under circumstances that makes people like me sort of terribly grumpy. Yes, I feel there's a great poignancy there, and I hope as soon as we possibly can, we're going to be able to go back to a new world where we can sort of celebrate sort of all the things we've missed: live poetry readings and bookshop events and, my goodness, author parties. Wouldn't that be amazing?
We've missed those dreadfully too. But I think people have found quite a lot of solace, respite and inspiration in the various books that they turn to during this time. So I wonder, Chris, how the worlds that you create with pen and paper are so vivid and so fantastic. And I find it so interesting that you've climbed into Alice's Wonderland, because that seems such a natural fit for you and your artistic style.
This is the other great advantage of these sort of conversations, is I can just sort of sip a cup of coffee insouciantly as you ask me these questions.
What do you think? What's your take on that kind of escapism thing, and also how are you creating those worlds that we can just slip into? I find your use of maps really interesting, because I too love a book with a map in, and it's a real anchoring point. So how do you go about creating that kind of those little realms of escapism?
I think we need escapism in a sense, and or means to escape from what has been a pretty sort of terrible time, I think, and it's no surprise in a sense that the books have become as even more popular. You know, the sale of books, the need for literature, it seems to sort of match the need for Netflix and, you know, sort of online games and stuff. So I think it's been, people have been searching for that sort of escape. In my professional life, one of the great pleasures has been to work with writers and to be invited into the imaginations of you know, someone else, and to sort of try and bring what I can to the pages of these amazing things called books. And I think I'm at my most comfortable when I'm actually working with someone else, with a writer or a poet, because in a sense they are center stage and I'm the accompanist, and I can sort of, you know, provide things for the pages of these books, try and make the reading experience as sort of magical and transporting as possible. And it's a great privilege doing that. But what I try not to do is be too prescriptive. In a sense, there's got to be room, I think, for the reader's imagination, and the reader to take what they want from the reading experience. And I'm just there in a sense to help along the way, maybe take one's coat at the doorway and hang it up nicely and suggest there might be some sort of you know, hors d'oeuvres in the corner before you get going. And then along the way to be a helpful sort of hint at sort of locations and places and characters. I try not to be too explicit in terms of sort of what is actually happening in books. I love that sense in a bookshop where you go in and you pick up a book and you flick through its pages and you see a mouse balancing a plate on its head whilst there seems to be something going on in the corner just out of sight. And you think, well, that's intriguing. I must read this book to find out. what this is about. Now I try and provide those moments where, you know, the casual browser will have a look and their interest will be piqued and they go, right, now I want to read this book. So that's my first sort of rationale. And I think maps at the beginning of books work in a very similar way. They sort of pique your interest, you know, opening up a book and seeing end papers, the 100-Acre Wood, or the Middle Earth, or sort of the realms of Narnia. You instantly think, right, now if I carry on and then to the first chapter and start reading about this, I'm going to find out what that mountain is and what lies just beyond that river and what that city is all about. So they're great starting points for me to sort of get into the imagination of the book, and I suppose visually to start building worlds, which is another great pleasure.
What was it like illustrating something as well known and revered as Alice in Wonderland and Lewis Carroll?
Completely terrifying.
Yeah,
Yes.
I must.
I think this is one of the things. What I had to do, I think, straight away, was to sort of put out of my mind, you know, the notion of, you know, Alices that have been, because I mean, I remember as a child, I was completely mesmerised by Tenniel's illustrations to Alice in Wonderland, and I just sort of felt that. You know, for me, that peopled my childhood, and so when I came to sort of start to sort of think about illustrating Alice in Wonderland, it was very daunting if I thought about it too much. And so what I started to do is sort of sketches of characters and almost half remember my responses to Tenniel's illustrations. But the further into the book I went, and when I realized that I had an extent of 320 pages to fill, I suddenly realized that actually I could illustrate far more than Tenniel was required to do. So Tenniel's got all the highlights, he's got all the brilliant moments, but there are lots of other moments as well within the book that I suddenly realized were there. The swimming in you know, the lake of your own tears with lots of things, the mouse on the shore trying to get dry by telling a very dry story about Anglo-Saxon archbishops, you know, those were moments I thought, oh my goodness, I'd forgotten all about these wonderful sort of moments in the book, which of course Tenniel couldn't illustrate because there were issues of production and time but for me the real sort of breakthrough in my thinking about the book and not being overshadowed in a sense or overawed, I've got to say, by sort of Tenniel and his wonderful illustrations, was when I came to think about the Hatter at the tea party. And I realized that actually the Hatter, for me, is one of my favorite characters in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And I simply didn't want to do a rather sort of pale imitation of Tenniel's Hatter. I just thought, well, you know, that's just not going to be as good. It's not going to be as interesting. I love that Hatter. I don't want to sort of, you know, do a pale imitation. So I thought, what could I do that would be the exact opposite in a sense of that? And I suddenly thought, well, it's a gender thing. Why not make the Hatter a girl? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, that's fun, because in the Wonderland world, you know, it's a topsy-turvy, strange place. Well, why not? You know, you know, we don't have to alter pronouns or anything. We can simply have a rather glamorous Hatter. And the minute I did that, I realized in a sense that I could make the book what I wanted it to be, and in a way introduce it to a new readership and turn sort of Wonderland into, I suppose, a contemporary children's book in some ways. You know, obviously it's got Carroll's immortal sort of text, but I could sort of, in a sense, make it bright and bold and contemporary in a way, and try and banish forever the memory of the atrocity committed by Tim Burton in the films.
I was going to ask about that actually, because I think if you grew up with a classic that has got a very set amount, sort of set style of illustrations with it, you kind of associate that text very strongly with that illustrative style. I imagine sometimes it's very much to an advantage, but it could also be to its detriment. So it's interesting that you mentioned that.
Yes, and I suppose the other question that one has to answer in a way is, you know, with a classic, is why illustrate it when it's been illustrated so well by so many others? And that's not a question I think I've altogether answered. You know, I did Alice in Wonderland because I was asked to, in a sense. If it was down to me, you know, Tenniel's immortal illustrations would live forever. There need never be another version of Alice, as far as I'm concerned. Don't tell my publishers that. But equally now, I'm embroiled in the world of Through the Looking Glass, and you know, all similar sort of thoughts and doubts besetting me on that, and yet I found myself sort of very drawn to the Red Queen and the White Queen and their personalities, which really come across rather wonderfully, and they've become for me sort of favorite characters in the story. And again, because I've got so many pages to fill, I get to draw them over and over again, which is rather good fun. And I rather love the White Queen, who is a rather sort of gentle soul, and she really does have problems with her hairstyle. And it reminded me of visiting my a local school down here in Brighton, the rather sort of famous girls' school, Rodine. And I remember sort of talking to a whole group of Rodine pupils at a book event, and they all look like the White Queen just after she's sort of lost her shawl and been rushing through the wood with her hair sort of all over the place. And one of the girls told me this was a thing at Rodine. It was called Rodine hair. And it's caused by, if you have long, glamorous hair, as a lot of the pupils did, the wind coming off the channel, because Rodine is on the cliff top, causes havoc, apparently. So if you come into a school hall, you've often got these wild, sort of windswept hairstyles. So yes, my White Queen has got Rodine hair. I think that might be an exclusive.
I love that.
That's excellent. I'm really interested in hearing you say about whether there's an argument for refreshing really classic illustrations. And I'm so pleased that you've done this, because we ran a children's book group for a while. And one of the things we would occasionally do is we would collect up as many editions of a classic book as we could. Very much ran the book group wanting to have discussion about the books rather than putting pressure on the children to read the books, because some children just won't, but I wanted them to feel comfortable in a bookshop and comfortable talking about the books. So we tried to do something for everyone. So we would bring in lots of editions, and then we would have a debate about whether one should judge a book by its cover. And so we did this with Alice in Wonderland, and we did it with the Railway Children. And so we got the children talking to neighbors and relatives to get their old editions as well. And we decided one absolutely must judge a book by its cover, because so much planning goes into that cover to make people understand whether it's going to be for them or not. It's actually almost part of their literacy in knowing what's for them and what isn't.
More than that, I think you should judge a book by its cover, its paper weight, its typography, the aroma of a new book, very distinctive. That can be lovely. Judge a book by everything, because a book is immersive. And I think one of the great joys of bookshops, and something I'm really looking forward to getting back to, is doing that thing that you can only do, I think, to the ultimate degree, which is browsing. And I think browsing is one of the most wonderful things. And in a bookshop browsing is extra special, because there is no, particularly now with the wonderful booksellers we have, there's no pressure. You know, you can go in, there's no one going, you know, buy that if you're going to read it. You can sit down, you can have a cup of coffee, but you can browse this wonderful, wonderful sort of bookshelf and just pick things up, put them back with impunity, and all the time just enjoying the feel and the quality and how a book feels in your hand. Some books are wonderfully weighty and feel, you know, they're going to take a lot of time. I like those, you know, sort of often set in imaginary places. You just think, my goodness, I'm going to be here a long time. Other books are wonderfully light and you know, feather light, and you just think, I can open this and enjoy it. And other books, like poetry books, for instance, one of the great pleasures I have with poetry is that they're books, in a sense, with inbuilt browsing capabilities. So you pick up a book, you're not going to be lost in a narrative and having to remind yourself, you know, who Henry VIII's courtiers were and which wife we're on at the moment. You can just pick it up and read a poem and close it again. And it just becomes this lovely, lovely sort of browsing experience. And I love actually going to the table with the picture books on it, because then you can just look and you just get, you know, an instant sense of story and place and setting from the array of books on a table like that. They're the most open, I think, of all books. And yet at the same time, there's this other thing which I love, which is the closedness of books, the way that a book can be inscrutable. You can pick it up and think, this book is giving me no indication of what it might be about. Therefore, I'm going to find out. And so sometimes the very closed books are one of the most satisfying. And I'm just wondering, forgive me, I'm going to turn on my camera again and just show you actually one of the most exciting books that I own. I'm going to put my camera on and see if I can lay hands on it. And this is an extremely exciting book. I'm going to show it to you here. Talk about an inscrutable book. Here it is. And this book I found, in fact, it was given to me by the wonderful students at Portsmouth University. I was invited to go to, I had an email, and in the email they said, would you come and visit the students at Portsmouth University? I said, yes, I would be delighted to. I live in Brighton. I could get on a train and just go down there. It wouldn't take long. What a perfect thing to do. So I decided to do that. And then I did what I do so often. I didn't look at my email until the day before I was due to visit Portsmouth. And I clicked on the email. I had a look at it just to make sure that I knew where to go, what the address was, and with a sinking heart realized I'd actually agreed to go to Plymouth. I completely misread. And so I suddenly realized, instead of a sort of hour down the coast, this was a 5-hour trip to just get down there. And so I'd need to organize a hotel. I'd need to sort of find out all sorts of things about it. So I went on this panic-fueled trip down to Plymouth, down in the southwest, and I arrived and they were all there waiting for me, and I said, I'm so delighted to be here in Portsmouth. They all laughed. But then one of these weird sort of serendipitous things happened, where the very next week I had an email, and it was in fact from Portsmouth University. And they said, would you like to come and visit? And I said, I would love to come and visit, because in fact I thought I already had. So this is going to set the record straight. So I was honor bound to go to Portsmouth University. And at Portsmouth University, they have a law library, and as well as an art faculty. And the law library is full of old books. And when they're very old, there's nothing more sort of out of date than an old law book. You know, I mean, they're completely useless once the law has been changed. And so what the law library does is it winnows out its shelves and gives the old copies to the art students to play with and make projects out of and do things with. And I said, what a lovely idea. They said, would you like one? I said, I'd love one. And they just went over, there's a great big stack of them. They just picked up this book and gave it to me. And it is a wonderful, wonderful book. It's Conveyancer and Property Lawyer, Volume 9, 1944 to 45. I mean, talk about inscrutable. I mean, there it is. This is everything you need to know in terms of sort of, you know, conveyancing and property law in the wartime years in Portsmouth. You know, it's all here. And it was very exciting. And I decided what I was going to do was I was going to use this redoubtable book, you know, as almost as a sketchbook. I was just going to sort of have a lot of fun just drawing on the pages. You know, that thing you're really not meant to do, just draw, scribble, the thing I got into trouble with when I was very little, the scribbling in books. Shouldn't be recommended. Here was this book, and I just decided, right, I'm just going to have fun, just scribbling on the pages, all over the pages. And I started after a little while, I started to think, this is fun. I'm going to share the fun I'm having, sort of scribbling all over the pages. And I started to do little Instagram posts where I sort of showed a drawing on the page. And I started to get indignant messages from librarians and booksellers going, what are you doing to that book? You're scribbling on the pages. I said, it's okay, it's okay. This is Conveyancer and Property Lawyer, 1944 to 45. You know, no one's going to mind. Look, it's permitted development in granting or withholding consent to interim development. An interim development authority will primarily bear in mind the unicorn. No one's going to mind. I said, no, just it's fine, it's fine. So on I went, and it became a sort of little bit of a sort of mania for me. I decided I was going to have to draw on every single page of this book, paper thin paper because of wartime rationing, I assume, but densely packed with all the sort of scholarly conveyancing laws that there might be. And I just drew all the way through, and I went all the way through right to the end. So it became a mission that I was going to draw all the way through right to the end. There it is, the end. And then I realized, just for completest reasons, I thought, right, I'll draw on the title page. That's the one page missing, just as a final thing. I turned to the title page, I started to draw, and then I realized who had written this book. Conveyancer and Property Lawyer has actually been written by someone called Harold Potter. Isn't that brilliant? So who knew the real Harry Potter was a conveyancer in Portsmouth? You know, this is the magic of these things. These things bound, bits of words bound in paper and covers.
That's extraordinary. That is just so magical. But are we all going to be now looking at these old law books in libraries and opening them, hoping we'll find some Chris Riddell kind of penmanship sort of little scribes of wisdom in there, and being sorely disappointed when we're faced with legalese?
One of the things I really do enjoy is going into a bookshop, finding one of my books and just doing a little sketch on a little bit of paper and putting it in secretly. I did that at Waterstones in Gower Street. And then just did a little Instagram post on it, and within sort of minutes someone was getting in touch with Gower's Waterstones saying, can you put aside this book I've just seen posted on social media? Can I buy it? And the bookseller, who told me this later, said it was someone in Perth in Australia, and so they sent the book to Perth in Australia. So talk about hand selling. That's quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Wow. That is amazing. But I think it just goes to show the connection that people have with the people who create the worlds that they want to dive into.
Yes, it is a magical thing, isn't it? And I think it's why we need bookshops, and we need places to go that have that sense of promise. I mean, I'm all for buying a sort of pound of potatoes, or making sure you've got somewhere you can sort of stock up on coffee or something, but bookshops are incredibly special, as you know. I mean, Kett's being a community-run bookshop, I mean, it's got a sense of destination, a sense of the reading community, which I think is wonderfully powerful, but also what a brilliant place just a while away, a few hours, and to slow things down. I love libraries for the same reason, and I love libraries in schools for precisely that reason. In the hectic life of a school, to have a place dedicated to books where you can just escape, in a sense, and find a corner and just lose yourself in a book is a magical thing. Bookshops provide a similar service on the bustling high street, I would argue, and so yes, I mean, I think we need them more than ever.
Amen to that. How is it in the bookshop this morning, Tracy?
Noisy. I've been on mute almost the whole time. No, it's fine. It's, you know, it's always a joyful place. It's, as you say, it's a place where people come because they are curious and want to be around people who also appreciate learning and kindness and wanting to be better. And it's always a great meeting of minds, even if they disagree. The conversation is great. So we're very lucky to be surrounded by so many really wonderful customers and our volunteers. But it is busy this time of year.
Tracy,
so I
it's
stay
also
on mute.
a place the way you go into a bookshop and suddenly realize this thing you didn't know you needed, you can't do without. And that's wonderful. You know, I go into bookshops and I say to myself, I'm traveling, I've got another place to go, I've got hand luggage. I come out with 3 inappropriately heavy books because I can't do without them. It happens to me time and time again. It's wonderful. And now, you know, bookshops have all sorts of other things, other enticing, exciting things. They have sketchbooks and blank books and things you can take away with you, notebooks, stationery of all sorts. And I'm afraid I'm a bit of an addict. You know, if there's a support group for people who can't go into a bookshop without buying a lot of stuff, I'm it, I think. And I've talked to quite a few young sort of booksellers who say to me rather sort of joyfully that they've actually spent half their salary. You know, they're almost working in the bookshop in order to buy books, you know, and so they're sort of and I know the feeling, you know, I think we do need a bookshop support group that perhaps could meet in a bookshop.
We had a volunteer a few years ago, and this story always makes me chuckle, but I think it speaks very highly about the community that is formed around books. And one of our volunteers came into the shop absolutely giddy. They'd just been to another bookshop in the area. And they said, look what I've just bought, you know, coming in to show up in our bookshop, the books you just bought in another bookshop. So you're absolutely right. You can't help yourself. I think that if you're in that world, it's just too enticing and too tempting not to.
And then of course we come home, don't we, and with our prizes, and they live on these wonderful places called bookshelves. And one of the, I can't say really there's been a lot to be sort of joyful about in the current lockdown. But the one aspect that I've really loved is seeing everyone's bookshelves behind them on Zoom meetings, just like this one. Because there they are ours and they say something about us. And I even enjoy the politicians who actually, you know, are very careful about what they put on their bookshelves behind them, because they want to sort of, you know, say something about themselves. You know, that is fun as well. But we've seen, I think, in a way that we very rarely have had a chance up till now. We've seen inside people's rooms, into living spaces. You know, people who would have thought, you know, that Boris Johnson actually, you know, lives in a rather featureless grey space with no books in sight at all, except I sort of, you know, could have predicted that. Whereas you get, you know, sort of other people who have wonderful bookshelves behind them, and you think, wow, that is so exciting.
It does tell you a lot about people or how they want to present themselves, if not exactly what they're reading.
Even as we talk, though, I'm aware behind me is a sort of completely cluttered sort of space that really I should have curated before this chat. But then it is my study, and you know, all sorts go on here. I mean, at the moment, I'm just in the process of doing something sort of slightly strange, which is self-publishing. Now, you could say, look, you know, this man has done 6 books this autumn, cluttering up the nation's bookshelves. But I did have a conversation a little while back. I think I've got something here. I'll just sort of show you. This is one of my sort of sketchbooks, and it's a sort of what I did sort of last December the 13th. Now, I make no secret of the fact I'm rather left-leaning. I wouldn't say I'm a Corbynista at all, but I'm a bit more of a Keir Starmerite, if there is such a thing. But I tend to be on the left. I work for the Observer newspaper and sort of share a lot of their views. I like to feel when I come to Norfolk, where I sort of have a cottage, that I'm seen as this, you know, rather sort of exciting left-wing firebrand. Whereas, of course, I'm very dull and rather conventional, but that's one of the great joys of coming to Norfolk. I sort of feel, oh, yes, I'm the man in the village who takes the Guardian, you know, one of those. We all know them. Here in Brighton, you know, I don't turn on any heads at all, you know, I'm very normal. But last December on the 13th, I woke up rather depressed by the thought of 5 years of Boris Johnson. And something that I think a lot of people have subsequently begun to share with me. I can't speak for more than my bubble, but I thought, you know, I had to do something to stop myself becoming apoplectic with rage every time I turned on the Today program on the radio first thing in the morning and listened to headlines and started to fume. I thought, right, I can either break the radio, and that's going to happen on a daily basis. I can't afford, you know, to buy my, you know, endless Roberts radios. I decided, right, what I'm going to have to do is a little drawing, just a vent. Little drawing. So I got a sketchbook. I got a sketchbook here, and I thought I'll just fill the pages each morning when I wake up. I'll just do a little sketch of something. I might just sort of share. This is completely unedited, so we're going to have to see, you know, what crops up. Oh my goodness, this is from the 3rd of October, and the death figure has got a sort of "Make America Great Again" baseball hat, and is saying, it's not the economy, it's the coronavirus, stupid. There can be only one person he's talking to. But I just decided to fill up the pages of my sketchbook with little drawings, you know, each day to sort of, you know, vent a little bit. This is a drawing from the 4th of October, and here is sort of Boris Johnson with his very special advisor, Dominic Cummings. He's dressed as Santa. Dominic is a little helper. And Boris is saying, so our handling of the pandemic has wrecked pantomimes and office parties. Our campaign against the BBC will ruin Christmas TV, and Brexit will obliterate New Year's Eve celebrations. Anything else? And the elf is saying, we could ban toffee apples and sparklers. So these are just little things that helped me vent, I've got to say, as I went through the year. It got me through, I've got to say. And my publisher got in touch with me and said, well, would you consider publishing it? You know, can we publish this thing you're doing? I've called it 5 years, a sketchbook of political drawings, and I just post them online each time I do them. And my publisher had seen this and said, you know, we could publish them. And I said, great, that would be fantastic. He said, only we can't publish it sort of this year, obviously. It'll have to be next year. And then we can only publish it this time of the year because we've got to, and I understand that. That's what publishers do. It's part of their job. But it just, to me, didn't feel quite right. It felt sort of overmanaged. And then I just was doing this for fun. And then I got a phone call from my publisher, very apologetic. He said, you know, Chris, we just can't make the numbers work, you know, with the print costs now and with the pandemic. And, you know, it's going to have to be printed here and transported there. And this has got to happen and that's got to happen. We just can't seem to sort of make the numbers work for our sales. And I said, that is wonderful news. That is fantastic news. That's great. I will do it myself. You know, it's something I would like to do just for those few people who would enjoy my daily thoughts. And so I created, I went back, and on the 12th of December last week, I realized I had 365 drawings that I'd done since the previous December. And I thought, right, I'll go to my local printer. I didn't go down to my local printer. I got in touch virtually. We had a little chat. He said, yeah, sure, I can print some copies of that. I said, fantastic. So he's going to print that for me. It's going to be 390 pages, perfect bound. And so it could rest on a coffee table, I'm sure. And I've just learnt today, because I posted up that I was going to do this. I've just learnt today that we've sold 300 copies and pre-ordered 300 copies. So basically that's made my printer happy. It's made me very happy. You know, I've deferred all the costs, so it's not going to cost anyone anything in that sense. And it'll be out in the world. And to me, that micro publishing, that just sort of taking a little thing and saying, let's make this happen, is one of the great sort of interesting areas that maybe, you know, we will be going into increasingly in the future. And what I would love to do, I think, you know, this time next year, is come in with my with a little bundle of 5 years, a sketchbook of political drawings, and present it to Kett's bookshop. Maybe volume 2. This is only volume 1, 2020, but you know, obviously there'll be a volume 2 and a volume 3, because I'm going to try and do this every year of this current government, because we've got a 5-year term. That's why I call it 5 years. So so this is year 1. I've got through year 1. Who knows what year 2 is going to be? It's got to be better than year 1. And I've just been saying to people online who've inquired about it, I said, look, you need this book as a reminder of why we all need to forget 2020. You know, every so often we'll go back, you can go through the pages going, oh my goodness, yes, COVID. Oh my goodness, Donald Trump. Oh my goodness, did Dominic Cummings really say that? Oh my God, you know, just little reminders each year as you go through of all those things that have happened.
Well, that's wonderful, and we'd love to for you to pop in with a bundle under your arm when your volume two is ready to go.
It follows actually, I did do a little experiment before I decided to do this in self-publishing. And it actually, I was really surprised because it was a runaway bestseller in a part of South Norfolk. You know, it's very exciting. It was my book, The Hats of Norfolk. And very, you know, small little thing that was published. And I was delighted because I just basically, I wonder if you, I'm going to switch to my document camera and see whether I can lay hands. It's now a very rare book, I've got to say. I didn't lodge it in the British Library or anything. I wonder if I can lay hands on one of the few copies around. Here we are. This is my first little sort of foray into self-publishing, The Hats of Norfolk. There is some blurb on the back. For students of East Anglian millinery, this brief collection of pencil portraits might prove of interest, although there is much to enjoy here for the casual observer of Eastern Counties headwear. So that's my little introduction. And it's just basically hats named after Norfolk towns. That's the Wotton Twin Tuft, the Clytemnestra, that's a little classical reference, the Holcombe Pickle, there's a particular. So I just went through with lots of the unthanked quiffler, worn in Norwich, I think, various parts of Norwich, the Harling Squall cap.
Right. So yeah, thank you for that, Harling Squall. I enjoy that very much.
Well, I actually got some sort of correspondence from people saying, you've missed out our town, what's going on here? So, you know, I haven't quite got to volume 2 yet, but a lovely coda to bits. I did this sort of a couple of years ago, was that I got my printer to do some and I didn't really sell them. I gave them away, basically. This is the sort of my sort of economic model, but it was a lot of fun doing it. And I got, you know, I got a modest edition done and they all sort of disappeared off into the wild. And it just was this sort of micro publishing idea that in the world of social media, if there is something that you want, however obscure and specialist, you can find it. Now, there's a way to find it. So by posting online, people who are interested in the Hats of Norfolk can you know, lay their hands on it. Obviously they can't now because I've sold out, you see, sold out the edition. So this is now a collector's item, but then that's nice for the people who did buy it, you see, the people who sort of supported me in my sort of East Anglian millinery phase. But the lovely coda to this was that as I sold the last one, Gressinghall Museum of Rural Life got in touch and said, we hear you've done a book all about Hats of Norfolk, would you come and give a talk? And I had to say, look, it is a very silly book. You do know this. I said, oh, that's all right. So I went along and had a lovely visit at Gressinghall where I talked to some lovely people, admittedly more about children's books than the Hats of Norfolk, but it was, the invitation was sort of given to me based on that.
It's wonderful that you've managed to create something so, well, at once so fantastical, but also so geographically
specific. Yes.
Oh, wow. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you this morning. Thank you so much for spending some time with us, with your sketchbook and all your other books as well. It's been really lovely to chat. And we'd love to see you in the shop when you're up in our neck of the woods again, and also when, you know, the COVID restrictions will allow us to socialize and things to get back to normal again.
I would love to. I mean, that's something to look forward to. We all need these things, don't we, to sort of pull us through. So yes, I'm looking forward to coming into Kett's books and just having a lovely visit. And as I say, I will have some self-published books under my arm. But also, I would love it. And this, Tracy, you're going to have to sort of, you know, be the arbiter of this. But I would love to draw on a wall. That's the other thing I really take great pleasure in. I can bring a pen, and I do sometimes joke to people that in fact I am Banksy. You know, it's not a well-known fact. Who can contradict me? But I'd like to think if I'm not Banksy, I'm a sort of bookshop Banksy, which means whenever I get a chance to go into a bookshop, it's always a great pleasure to be allowed to draw on the wall.
We'll find a space. You're absolutely welcome to draw on our wall.
It's a deal.
Yeah, it's a deal. Can't wait. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry I've been muted so much of the time, but it's been absolutely fascinating listening to you talk about your work and watching you work as well. So really enjoyed the talk. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I've now got to go back to my studio at the bottom of the garden and finish drawing Boris Johnson as Scrooge, opening the door to the ghost of Christmas Present, who's not looking good, I've got to say.
Right. Okay, well, thank you again.
My pleasure. Bye.
Bye.